Hi, it's Leigh Farnell here, and thanks for listening to Leading Your Best Life. This really is a fantastic interview I'm about to share with you. It's with Jill Jensen, and Jill is a director of Heart Strategy. She's a business strategist, she's a facilitator, coach. She says she's a rule breaker, and she's into unlocking the extraordinary potential of humans to create the future. It really is a great interview, and you're going to get a lot out of it, whether you're in business or you're a consultant or you just want to learn about how to get the best out of yourself. Stay tuned, listen up. Here we go. Well, hi folks, Leigh Farnell here, Leading Your Best Life. And today I'm with a friend, Jill Jensen. Jill, how are you going?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very excited to chat with you.
Well, very nice. And I like the plant in the background, looking very homely. It's fantastic. Now, Jill, you and I met through our Lifter business networking group, and you're fascinating. And also, I know you did Kath Sutherland's workshop on branding and so on. So I know you've got a great background. So let's actually just start with the Jill Jensen story. Don't do the 4-day workshop version. Just in 2 or 3 minutes, tell us the Jill Jensen story. Where have you come from and what's been your journey to get to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So in my previous life, I was a geophysicist. So I worked in oil and gas for 17 years, both here and overseas. And I did an MBA in around 2014, and that was kind of what prompted my interest in the world of strategy. So I took my first role as a strategy advisor, and then had a number of different roles leading culture change, leadership programs, and then got into business performance and management. And what happened when I landed into those positions, I just loved going to work every day.
Oh.
I was the most annoying person in the room. I loved all the concepts around future thinking and the challenge of charting a course towards the future in uncertainty. So yeah, that's how I ended up where I am. I guess I've got my own business now, as you know, and I left corporate officially at the start of this year, and there was a whole bunch of things. We might get to it today during the conversation. But basically, I found the courage and the conviction to follow my heart and start my own business. And so now I do strategy consulting and facilitation for organisations of all sizes.
Wow. Well, you know, what as I'm hearing your language, you know, I've spent a lot of time with blokes. In fact, we have a men's mental health forum. But to hear words like follow my heart, courage of conviction, you know, charting a course towards the future. This is the female energy in corporate. You know, I can't imagine a group of guys in suits and ties sitting around a board table going, boys, we want to talk today about following our heart, you know. So it's a whole other language that's triggering, and needless to say, triggering a different energy, triggering a different thinking in corporate. So certainly this whole area. In fact, the other day, you know, we did at Lifter who our target avatars were, and I realised my target avatar is essentially someone who has done engineering or a degree of some kind, but has then done an MBA, in the sense that they've got a lot of skills and but there are things still missing in terms of probably not the left brain is very full, but the right brain in terms of heart, conviction, energy, people, leadership, engaging people is the part that's missing. So can you comment and respond to that? What I'm hearing and feeling as you're talking.
Yeah, you're speaking my language.
Right.
Have you come across Jungian theory around the anima and the animus? Because you mentioned a little bit about the energy, like the feminine energy. That's what you heard in my words, and like business and strategy has come from this place of masculine energy. Strategy by its origin has come from warfare.
Yes.
So it's no surprise that a lot of when we think about business, we think of things like rationality and logic and analysis and chasing goals. But my sense is that it's not served us very well based on where we are today. Business needs a new direction. We need to come back to ourselves and understand what it means to be human. And I sense that we need to balance these energies of the masculine and the feminine. And that's not related to gender. This is just everyone has these attributes about them. But the feminine attributes are more around creativity, receptiveness, intuition, being in touch with how we feel. And so these are the elements that I try to bring in through my work, is acknowledging that we actually need both. We don't need to squash one. We just need to bring a little bit more of that feminine energy into the workplace.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, one of the core texts that, so many guys, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, the Chinese call it Sun Tzu, know the enemy, know yourself, need not fear the result of 100 battles, all of that kind of stuff, which needless to say is very useful. But and people love it, and they even talk about, guys like Trump seeing business as war, and there are winners and losers. You've got to, you just kill or be killed kind of metaphor. And literally this morning, I was listening to a podcast I'd recorded on this leader. I wouldn't even call him a leader, more of a destroyer. These people that have grown up in hierarchy, that just like, I didn't claw my way to the top of the food chain to be a vegetarian. Forget the love in, mate. I've got the car park and I've got the position and I got the paycheck and you'll do as I say. And they even put up words like, we're into empowerment. Yeah, but what I mean by that is you'll do as I say. Literally to the point where, in this one particular client, we do a survey, how safe is it to share ideas or give feedback? And of course, the scores were very, very low. And this person, I can't believe it. I'm always open to feedback. No, right. Even at this moment we're speaking, this particular person is trying to cut the head off one of his subordinates who's given feedback. It's just outrageous. And I literally put on LinkedIn this morning as a semi-provocative statement, should managers actually need some kind of psychological analysis or be held accountable when they start behaving as sociopaths or because the psychological damage. This particular person, I was speaking to one of his subordinates who rang me yesterday, going, my mental health is suffering. This guy is just doing his best to undermine me and cut my legs off. And yet at the same time, a manager from a different part of that organisation, a female, it was chalk and cheese. At the final round when we did the workshop, she said, I'm so blessed to be working with these people. We've worked collaboratively. I'm not the best manager in the world, but we're all learning together. And that whole level 5 leadership of systems and humility. Whereas this other character, humility is the last thing on this. He's the superhero. He's the one that is, I solve all the problems. All my people are just basically fools, and I have to keep going in and cleaning up after them. And it's just like, mate, are you serious? The damage in terms of energetics, even this particular person, even when they're speaking, the energy that's coming out of their mouth or out of their being, people walk away confused and undermined, and whether it's conscious or unconscious, but it's damage. And I wonder if in 20 or 30 years' time, people will literally say, we're suing that board, these directors, because you've allowed these psychopaths and sociopaths and narcissists to bully and push and bash and cajole. So coming back to, your business, heart and strategy and energy, what are your thoughts? I mean, again, working in corporate, you must have seen, as I say, you've good, average, bad managers. Give me some experience. Obviously, commercial in confidence, you can't use names, but what you've seen and the characteristics you see in good leaders or great leaders versus bad average leaders?
That's a great question. I don't know about you, but there's always very few people who you come across in life who have such a massive impression on you in terms of, I want to be like that person. And there was one particular leader that I worked with who made me feel like that. He was very high up in a global corporation, sort of vice president type level. And I was just, felt like I was a nothing at that point. And when I met him, he made me feel incredibly important and heard. And he listened to me in a way that I'd least expected, and was very untypical of managers in this organization. And it wasn't just with me. He did that with everybody at every level. So one of the best attributes of a leader, I think, is recognizing the inherent value and power that every single human being has. And I think you can't actually recognize that if you can't recognize that in yourself. And so I think a lot of these traits that you were just talking about come from people who are actually very insecure in themselves. They've got they're dominated by that tribal, egotistical mindset that they're probably not even aware of. It's like everything is a battle. Like, it's known that 95% of our thoughts, actions, behaviours are subconscious or unconscious. And so we're being steered, unconsciously in whatever the direction of our evolutionary psychology, of our cultural systems. We're just talking about the origins of business and warfare. So unless leaders are prepared to turn the mirror around and look at themselves and be willing to understand what it means to be human, and how to understand your own mental landscape, and then have self-respect, value yourself, value your own power. And I don't mean a power from like a warfare power. I mean the power to really make a massive impact on other human beings and the planet. I think that's for me, that's the future of leadership, is people who are willing to do the inner work to make the change on the inside, to be able to make the change on the outside. We're all running around going, oh my God, the world's a disaster, we've got to change everything on the outside. But I don't think that's the solution. I think the outside is a reflection of what's going on inside. So it's time to go back to our old blueprint, understand what it means to be human, understand how it is that we actually perceive reality through our five senses, understand that we've got cultural programming, we've got evolutionary programming, we've got belief systems that need to be addressed. And to do that, actually, it's really helpful to have conflict in our lives. It's the difficult. It's the people who annoy us, or it's the people who trigger us, that actually provide the gift of a mirror back to ourselves about a belief system that maybe we ought to reevaluate.
Wow, the power of the trigger and the power of the mirror, which, of course, you're reminding me of this particular person I'm thinking of, because first of all, my mission, of course, and similar to yours, I'm sure, and I'll ask you about it in more detail, is I want to empower, help people realise their full potential, be as good as they possibly can be, which is why we've got leading your best life, leading your best business, leading your best team. This particular person, when I asked them, what are the areas you think you could improve on, and what are the areas as a leader you could actually get better at, they literally said, I don't know, I don't have a mirror. And you've said, do the inner work. Clearly not able or not willing to turn the eyeballs inward. And, of course, when the eyeballs won't go inward, then they're focused on everyone else. It's everyone else's fault that things aren't working. Their ego is so fragile, their beliefs that I'm perfect. I have to be seen to be perfect. I have to be seen to be great. I have to be seen that I don't make mistakes. It's other people making mistakes. And of course, the more they do that, as you say, and the less willing they are to turn the eyeballs inwards and do the inner work around what are the beliefs, what are some of these beliefs that are driving you, mate? You're not a 7-year-old anymore, still trying to impress daddy, or you're trying to get a game in the football team, and it's like you're now a 40-year-old man. Particularly, not always men, because we see women as some. Because I remember there was a female in this particular organisation, control freak, constantly nitpicking, undermining colleagues, being bossy and bully. It gets to be like, pardon the pun. In the male world, who's the biggest dick in the room? This woman is like, it's almost like I'm the biggest bitch in the room. But this desire to dominate, to be able to walk out and go, wasn't I smart? I was the cleverest in that meeting, or didn't I look good? It's like poor people but again, as you say, you've got to be willing to do the inner work. And if you then say, as you say, if people that are triggering you use that as a gift to then go, okay, what can I learn? How do I, as distinct from they're triggering me, they're idiots, I've got to get rid of them.
Yeah. And I think something that I learned a few years ago from a beautiful friend of mine, I'll tell you, it's a short story. I was driving into the city. She was actually giving me a lift to work, and I had an executive presentation that afternoon, and I hadn't prepared as much as what I wanted to. So I would have wanted to do about 6 hours. I was going to have about half an hour to prepare, and so I was really anxious, right? And she said something to me so powerful, and it shifted my whole perspective from that day on. She said that firstly, there are no mistakes, that I have everything that I need in any given moment to deliver what is needed to be delivered.
Yep.
And so all I needed to do was pay attention to the task at hand, I had 30 minutes, get to work, pay attention to the task at hand, and know that deep down that if I can trust myself, that everything will be perfect. There's like, you can create all these stories about, should have done this better, should have done that better. How are people going to perceive me? What are people going to think about? But I never forgot that. And it's, like I said, it's changed the way that I approach all tasks. So, and back to what we were just saying about these people who are leaders, they're constantly undermining their own value. So you don't show up in those ways if you understand your value. And I don't mean like a fake confidence. We often talk about how do you build confidence. It's not about that. It's much deeper. It's more that you have a place here on earth, and that if you can show up from a state of being where you are grounded and you are speaking from your heart and you're using all of your experiences and your talents and your wisdom and your rationality as well in that moment, then that is exactly how it's meant to be. I really believe that.
Yes, and because what you're talking about there is we talk about the fact that you can live in one of 3 time zones: the dead past, the imagined future, or the present. And of course, why are you anxious? Because you're already catastrophizing in the imagined future that this is going to go bad. Yes. Versus if I'm 100% present in the moment, I'm here for these people right now. What do they need? And what we know about, we call it executive presentation, but in a sales or it's communication, which has to be two-way. So some of the best presentations or communications has been literally, I'll never forget a guy who used to head the baggage handling at Sydney Airport. He originally did it at Perth Airport, and he was so good with people because as a manager, he'd go down with the baggage handlers and actually work with them, which just blew them. They couldn't believe that a manager would do that. Because he did it so well at Perth Airport in the lead up to the Sydney Olympics, which of course is now 23 years ago, this guy, literally they said, okay, we're going to have so many jumbo jets coming in. And they're like, the Sydney Airport is never going to be as busy as before the Sydney Olympics. We're going to need baggage handling just working so well. So this guy went in and literally spent through the first 3 days as a manager working with the guys on the bags, and they just, what the hell? And of course, learned so much about it, built so much trust. And as time went on, Sydney Airport was an incredible success in that period. So at one of the presentations, well, because he's a mate of another mate that I did a lot of work with, he literally said, okay, guys, that's who I was, but what questions you got for me? And of course, people are so used to hierarchical situations where he's the speaker, I passively sit and get, and hopefully something hits me that's of use, versus what do you want to know? And silence, right? And then someone, well, how did you do? And away it went. And of course, it became this incredible two-way flow of information. He's 100% present. And it was just, it's live. It's happening before you. It's not death by PowerPoint. It's not. I've got all these fantastic PowerPoint slides that I'm going to show you. You passively go, oh wow, look how clever she is because she's got the PowerPoint slides. No, it doesn't work that way. So, but when you're 100% present, sometimes the best. In fact, Buckminster Fuller called it teaching on the edge.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I know what I know. I've got 30, 40 years of experience. What do you want to know? Of course, and people are shocked by that question because, well, can't I just sit here and pretend that I'm interested? So that presentation, what did happen in it, by the way? How did it go? Close that loop for me. How did that presentation go?
It was fine, and they always are, right? That's the thing. Like we're great at catastrophizing into the future, but why not change the experience of the present to enjoy the preparation as opposed to panicking? I think that's what's shifted a lot for me as I prepare for whether it's a workshop or a presentation. I really try and enjoy them, like know that I've got everything that I need at this given time, that it will be received by whomever wants to receive it. It might not be received well by people who aren't ready to hear it, or it's not their thing, and that's totally fine. But so long as I can step out of that ego, that the tribalism, the worry that I'm not going to fit in, or I'm going to say something that it's going to kick me out of the clan. These are the things that's operating in the background.
Yeah.
If I can just show up with truly understanding my value and in that given moment, then that's all that needs to happen. And actually, I've got a presentation coming up in November. I think it's a couple of hundred people, and I'm speaking alongside people who have, Wikipedia pages about them. And so there's a lot of that. It's real life work, inner work for me to really use some of these principles on myself.
Yes. Well, literally, I was having a conversation with a friend this morning on the phone because I'm doing a session with our junior water polo kids tonight, and it's the third in a series on what I call Kaizen mindset.
Yes.
So if I can expose the 14, 15, 17, 18-year-old kids to, the mind, the inner game of, there's a quote that says in water polo, there's three games. There's the game you see above the water, the game you don't see below the water, and the game going on in each of the players' minds. And I said, well, I'm just interested at this point in what's going on in your minds and you getting in control of that. But one of the books, and as I say to people, I used to consult to Dimmicks, and while I was waiting for the chief exec from time to time, I'd go and look in the bookshop and end up, I think I spent more money on books than I did what I earned there. But one of the books was The Inner Game of Golf and The Inner Game of Tennis. And the guy who wrote that uses a formula that I use all the time: performance equals potential minus interference. Performance equals potential minus interference. So if I've got 100 units of potential, but I've got 60 units of interference, bullshit talk, negative self-talk, doubt, catastrophizing about the future, then at best I can do is 40. But if I take that same 100 units of potential and reduce the interference to 30, I immediately can get a jump to 70 because I've reduced interference.
Yeah.
And so the quickest way to improve performance is reduce interference. Yes, you can improve potential through obviously increasing capability and capacity and skill and strength and all those things. But the quickest way, reduce interference, which again comes back to be present. Yeah. Be present. Forget the past. Forget the future. I'm here for you guys. And the more you can shut that judging voice off, which is just bullshit interference anyway, the better you'll play the game. And, of course, from a communication point of view, if you've got interference and anxiety going on, we say state is contagious. NLP says state is contagious. So if you're going in with anxiety and inner voice, people are going to pick that up consciously and subconsciously. Why is this person making me feel nervous? Because you are. But versus going in, I'm here for you. I'm here to add value. We're here to have fun. We're here to, learn. That state is contagious too. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. They're saying your energy introduces yourself before you enter the room. That's very true. We all experience that. But somehow when it, push comes to shove, we tend to put that in the, the metaphysical kind of bucket, when actually we know that our emotions and our thoughts generate a field of information that we can now detect, that they're going to be leveraging with AI.
Yes.
I really like the work of the Heart Math Institute. They talk about heart coherence and how if you can develop heart coherence, which is essentially heart rate variability, so consistent heart rate variability, combined with generative emotions, so that means gratitude, positive emotions essentially, and intention. Those are, so they've done, hundreds and hundreds of studies over the last 25 years looking at how that impacts our biological systems and particularly the way our brains work. And those conditions are ideal for any kind of creative work, which I put strategy, future thinking into that category of So, back to the question around, like thoughts and feelings. I think I've spoken to you a little bit about the quantum perspective as well. I love playing around with quantum philosophy because from a quantum perspective, like our whole perception, our whole, experience of reality is just nothing like it is at the quantum level. But from a quantum perspective, everything's entangled. And so what happens over here happens over there. So every thought, emotion, reaction, action is having a ripple effect into the world. So yes. I bring that into when we're talking about stakeholder engagement. How are you actually perceiving your stakeholders before you even think about what you're going to do, communicate, what you want from that particular stakeholder? How are you actually perceiving them currently? And how could that actually be affecting how they're showing up? Same with observer effect, that simply by observing a system, you change it. So what are you actually paying attention to in business? Because by paying attention to energy flows, you're going to shift the systems. And I mean, back to metaphysical, if you have you ever done a loving kindness type meditation where you create generative thoughts towards somebody that you might not particularly like very much?
I have, yes. Loving kindness meditation, yeah.
And it's super powerful, isn't it? Actually, without having a single conversation with somebody, I did this to somebody in my office once who, it's not that I didn't like them, but I just didn't know them at all. They were just a stranger in the office. And I spent a couple of weeks just doing loving kindness, to meditation, which means basically thinking of them and thinking of them from a place of care and love. We became friends.
Amazing.
How does that even happen?
Yes. As you say, the observer effect. There's so much in what you just said. One of the things I teach salespeople is we're talking about rapport. I said, I want you to find things you like about this person. I want you to consciously be looking for, what do I like about this person? Because we say, if you want them to like you, the quickest way is find things you like about them. And one of the role plays I was doing once at one stage, I think I called it the Andy effect, because Andy, in the role play, it was obvious he didn't like the person. I said, I want you to find things you like about him, because he had to work hard to do it. But immediately it changed the dynamic. But coming back to, as you say, the quantum, which is the observer effect, which coming back to this guy that's the bully, what he's looking for are mistakes in his people. And, of course, they make more mistakes, which makes him feel so much better. Why are these people making all the mistakes? Because that's what you look for, mate. Because I say to people, catch people doing things right. But he's not. This particular fellow is so wired up, he can't do that, because it means if they're doing it right, it means he can't be doing it right. It's like, it's, talk about it's what they call it, it's a win-lose situation. But look, coming back to inner work, Jill, what you're talking to me about, you did not learn in geophysics and you did not learn in your MBA. So what has been your learning journey to get to this point where you're talking about quantum and observer effect and, heart math? And so tell, what programs or what have you done to get to be exposed to this?
Well, my first kind of introduction to all of this type of stuff was a book that I read in 2008. It's
yes, the Dalai Lama,
The Joy of Living, and it's a book on Buddhism philosophy. And I had the opportunity to put some of this into practice. I actually got stuck in Syria once. This is before the war. I got stuck in Syria with no water, no food, no money, no flight. I was coming home for emergency back surgery. So it was a terrible situation. And I had about 24 hours to deal with that. And so the way that I dealt with it was very acute present awareness. So every second that went past, I was okay. And so for 24 hours, I said to myself, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And it was incredible. I was like, I actually was okay. But had I allowed myself to think about what might have happened in that situation, I would have been it would have been really traumatic.
Yes.
So that was my first understanding of how our minds work. Was the first I see what's going on that our thoughts create our experience, and actually we don't have as much control over our thoughts as what we think we do. And so from there, I read more. I got into yoga. I started meditation. And I've just been slowly increasing that. Like I do at least one meditation retreat a year. I just did a Kriya yoga course this year. I did Vipassana 10-day silent meditation retreat last year. It's all about understanding your inner landscape. And on the back of that as well, my background being in geophysics, I also have this fascination with quantum. So the other books that I've read over the time are things like, The Fabric of the Cosmos.
Okay, wow.
I love reading about science. And so where that led me is to an intersection of spirituality and science, and realizing that a lot of the, indigenous cultures around the world, whether it's in India or, America or here in Australia, their understanding of reality is much more aligned with the deeper understanding around quantum physics than the more mechanistic, deterministic, Newtonian view of the world. And so I've been, a lot of books that I read is around this intersection of science and spirituality. And I guess layered on top of that was a fascination with the role of institutions in shaping the future.
Yeah.
It's always been it's a big question mark, right? Institutions control so much of the culture and the paradigm of thought of the day. They the directors of wealth and resources. And so what is the role of institutions in shaping the future? And then coming back to this, businesses are actually just human endeavors, right? It all comes back to this being human. So I hope that sort of paints a picture of kind of how I ended up where I am here today, with his business. So it's business consulting, but it's through the lens of understanding what it means to be human, and therefore understanding what true reality is, and therefore what possibility is open to us. That's what gives me goosebumps.
Yes, well, that's what motivates Jill Jensen is you talked about that whole idea of toying on the fringe of possibility. Tell me about that, because as you say, the word possibility, I just saw you light up when you used that word. So talk to me about what the word possibility means to you and how that ticks in with what motivates you.
Yes, it does light me up. I love the phrase, this is what we do in scenario planning in a business sense. We take people to the edge of possibility, and then
edge of possibility.
We play.
We play at the edge of possibility.
Edge of possibility, yes.
Wow.
So just on that word play, I just read the other day, there's some more research out that it takes 400 repetitions to learn a new skill. This is actually in the context of children, so I'm not sure if it applies to adults in normal circumstances, but in the context of play, it takes 20 repetitions to learn the same skill. Amazing. So to actually build a synapse in the brain. And so this idea of thinking about the future from a state of presence and playfulness is incredibly powerful and important. See, when we talk about the future in the general business sense, it's quite depressing, isn't it? You know, we're either talking about what needs to change and, you know, climate change and what are we going to do with AI? It's hard work, yes. But I have a sense deep down that because we are all part of the very intricate fabric of nature, that there is not really any hard work in nature. Have you ever seen starling mamations? The birds that flock together.
Oh yes, when they float, all of a sudden they do big black flocks moving around. Yeah.
Yes.
The shape. Yeah.
I often think about those flocks of birds when I think about what needs to change. You know, because it seems like this massive task ahead of us that happens outside of us. But the way those birds shape shift and change formation is they're only aware of the 5 or 7 birds within their immediate radius, and they talk to those through whatever means, sensing of some sort. And that's all they need to do to completely shift the shape of their formation. And so I think about that from the role of business, that if people can connect back to what it means to be human, number one, so coming back to yourself, being present, understanding the nature of reality and that concept of possibility, because that's, from a quantum perspective, that's literal, that anything is possible, but we can't perceive that with our minds. And that's fair enough. We're human. The way that we think about the future is we trigger the same parts of the brain of the past. We've only got the past to leverage. We create symbols and we recognize patterns, because at the end of the day, it's all about survival and reproduction, right? That's what our brains are wired for. So it's very difficult for us to think about the future as having this infinite possibility. But the moment, if you can grasp that, and this is what I love talking about and inspiring and playing around, you know, if we can grasp that and use our creative mind, our right brain, to visualize a future that inspires us, that is much more connected with our blueprint of humanity, you know, connected to the earth, that's who we're all interconnected, then I have immense hope for the future. Immense. It lights me up. This is why I do what I do.
Right. And look, and talking like this, of course, I immediately go, okay, for a corporation to buy this, I'll go back to that heart coherence in a second, but looking at your LinkedIn page, somehow what you've just said then needs to be converted into business language. So you know, you're talking heart, spirituality, intersection of science and spirituality, et cetera, et cetera. Some chief exec what the hell is she talking about? So how do you convert that into, as director, heart strategy, business strategist, how give me an example of how someone finds out about you and what the conversation might look like as you work through them becoming a client.
Absolutely. So I think at the most basic level, I offer strategy, facilitation, and consulting. So really, that's about charting a course to the future for an organisation, ensuring that your business is robust. You've got a strategy that's robust in an uncertain landscape. Getting your team to align on that strategy. So if there's a shift or change in the business, you might have a change out of board of directors. You need to have a conversation about risk, about how you're going to allocate resources. So at the very surface level, that's what I do. But there's a lot of organisations and consultants out there that do that. So the difference with my work is that I try to share quite a lot about my philosophy that underpins the way that I approach strategy development. And the way that comes through with organisations is it's actually quite subtle. So it depends on the client. Like, I think people who are going to be attracted to my work are people who actually have this sense that maybe there's a different way to approach strategy. Back to the very first conversation we had around balancing feminine and masculine energies and being more intuitive and seeing strategy, creating the future as being an important part of shaping the future of humanity, right, at the highest level. So, but actually, when we talk about when I actually provide the services, say it's like a typical strategy development session where you are creating a North Star. What's your vision and mission? You do some strategic analysis, which is, understanding your current state, thinking about developing foresight. We might bring in scenario planning, which is where you do that playing at the edge of possibility, but I don't have to use that language, right? Mm-hmm. We do scenario planning, and then we create the strategy and then implementation. And so where some of these concepts come in is, for example, creating the conditions for strategy development sessions. So what does that look like? It might mean that we always start a conversation around purpose, connecting inner purpose to the broader business purpose. I always try to do something that generates positive emotions and gratitude and intention. Mm. So you can see that a lot of these things can get woven into a workshop without actually me standing there saying, speaking about quantum physics. But sometimes I've actually found some clients want me to. They're ready and they're receptive to hearing this different perspective, and others aren't so much. But I'm imagining that as time goes by, my business is quite new, but as time goes by, I'm going to start getting more people who are really understanding that that business strategy is much more powerful than what we give it credit for, and that leaders and individuals of these organisations are in a very unique position to be able to shape the future of humanity for the planet through these very small actions by, like I said, understanding what it means to be human.
Fantastic. Which again reminds me of the Peter Drucker quote of, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Yes. But once you bring the observer effect in to go, well, if I start looking for those things, it's actually I'm going to manifest it. I'm going to create it.
Yes. Yes. Actually, that's what we use for scenario planning. So this concept of prospective hindsight, spending time visualizing the future, playing on the edge of possibility, and that creates, this is just neuroscience, it creates future memories. So you become more receptive to that particular future playing out.
Yes.
It's something that we don't talk about is how do you develop receptivity to an alternate future?
Beautiful.
So currently, we either repeat or we evolve. And so, yeah.
Repeat,
so that's another thing that
evolve.
Repeat or evolve. And if
receptivity to an alternative future.
Yeah.
Well, funny enough, one of the people that I interviewed in the last week, Karen Monahan, who set up a business charity called Our Kinds, where their mission is to get rid of single-use coffee cups and all that waste that goes on every day. We were talking, and literally, I'm going to ask you shortly as well in terms of daily routines. But her morning routine is to go for a walk, stop at a coffee shop, and journal. And what she does in her journal is not write what I'm thinking or how I'm feeling right now. She literally writes her future. She writes her desired future. So it's like I'm sitting in my house, I'm overlooking the ocean, my family, and she literally paints out what the day looks like as the future she wants, which, coming back to the observer effect and the very things you're talking about here, receptivity to an alternative future, she's crafting, shaping it, but putting that into the present, which again, from a quantum physics point of view, of course, that's how you do it. I thought, oh, well, that's a fantastic routine. So let me ask you in terms of what you do on a daily basis. I'd love to hear your daily routine in terms of time you get up. What do you do as your day unfolds, particularly in terms of daily discipline to get the best out of yourself and to be the best person you can be?
It's kind of shifted and changed over time, but a big priority for me is movement, sunshine, getting in nature, and some kind of meditative practice. So reflective, meditative. It could be a meditation, or it could be doing just that, what you just described, journaling or affirmations or something like that. So they're probably the top four.
What time do you get up in the morning?
Anywhere between 4 and 6.
Wow.
I find I'm my most productive very early. So if I've got lots of work to do, I get up at 4 and I can, punch out 2 hours of work before the kids wake up. I've always been an early riser. When I was working in corporate, I used to go to the gym most mornings at 4:30. Thankfully, in my relationship with my husband, we both prioritise exercise and particularly exercise with others. So then you're creating that connection piece as well.
Yes.
That's for us absolutely fundamental for so many reasons, like mental health, physical health, just, demonstrating good, healthy behaviours for our kids.
Yes.
So most of our conversations revolve around, so when are you doing that and when am I going, making sure that we both get our exercise in.
So in the morning, talking about exercise, what's the group you exercise with in the mornings?
So I do CrossFit, which is great because that's everyone does the same thing at the same time. So it's a real community-based.
Where do you do that? At a gym or it's a warehouse thing? Or?
Yeah, just at a gym at Claremont CrossFit I go to.
Fantastic.
And I started swimming with a group of individuals on, once a week I swim, and we often laugh. I once called it swimming training, and they said most of them are over 60. So I'm the youngest by quite a long way. And they corrected me and said, oh, no, we don't call it training. We just call it swimming. So it's this lovely group that we swim together, and then we always go for coffee. And sometimes if people can't swim, they still come to coffee. So again, it's really about that connection.
Yeah.
And then other than that, I walk, I run or walk the dog.
Fantastic. What about reading? Tell me about the mind. What books are you reading at the moment?
I am... do you know what? I'm so in love with the book that I'm reading at the moment that I am speechless about it. I can't recommend it enough.
Total Reset. And it looks a very thick book.
It's 700 pages.
Oh, my God.
It's written by a man called Greg Campbell, an incredible man. He lives down in Dunsborough currently.
He's a mate of mine. Greg Campbell's a mate of mine. I actually worked with Greg Campbell. If it's the same Greg Campbell, which I'm sure it is, his mother was Joan Campbell, the potter. I don't know if he talks about her. Greg and I worked together changing the culture of Telecom Australia. Yes. Does he talk about that, does he?
It does.
Okay, well, he was my first major boss mentor, Greg Campbell. Yeah, we had a team of consultants.
Now
that is bizarre. He lives down in, I didn't even know where he was. The last I knew he was he was living in Dalkeith. So now he's in Dunsborough, is he?
He is.
He's full on. That 700 pages. That's Greg Campbell. He's prolific. Yeah.
He said it took him 30 years to write this book, but
wow.
Oh my gosh, I am just on a mission to, like, I've actually, it's one of those books that you can read from any. I started at the back and then went to the middle, and now I'm going from the front, and I'm up to page 144. But this is realigning with our timeless holistic blueprint for living. And he talks, like he spent a lot of time up north with Indigenous
Aboriginals,
peoples.
yeah.
Yeah, and talks about that similar to my philosophy around business, that the way of the future is for us to reconnect with basically our humanity and our timeless living blueprint for living, which is letting go of this, hierarchical win-lose, destruction, warfare perspective, and stepping back into perceiving the reality as it truly is, which is all connected.
Wow, that is incredibly ironic, Jill, because Greg, what happened was I was lecturing at University of Wollongong, and someone said we want someone to talk on fitness and stress and health at this conference. It was a mate of one of the lecturers at UWA. I go there, do the lecture on the stress and health and lifestyle stuff that I'd done for my master's thesis. The problem was the night before had been the presentation dinner at Cronulla Water Polo Club where we'd won the premiership. So I had a hangover at this thing, and it was hard work. And I said, can I sit and listen to the next speaker? And it was Greg. And Greg was with celebrity speakers, and he'd just come back from the America's Cup, where he'd been doing stuff with Sid Fisher Syndicate. And at the end of it, I said, mate, can we catch up, because I want to find out how to get more speaking gigs in Sydney. And when we had lunch in North Sydney, he said, we've just won the contract to change the culture of Australian telecom, and I need 10 consultants on the team, and I've read some of your stuff, and I think you should come and join my team. And so I was on this very small salary down at Wollongong, and I was bouncing between Wollongong and Greg. And I mean, so that essentially, that's how I started my career in corporate consulting. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I was delighted. I mean, I didn't know anything about Greg, but I was delighted to read about his journey. He spent some time in Indian ashrams. So same kind of Buddhism philosophy that comes through. So that's his background. And then I saw that he was into consulting as well. And, that he talks a bit about that job he did with telecom. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow. And so anyway, I made contact with him. So we're going to catch up. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, say good day to him for me.
I will.
If you've got his number, I must give him a call. It's literally been years since we touched base. But a superstar in this again. The guys in the consulting team, the bulk of them had been monks with Muktananda.
Yes.
They've been running around with orange robes on. And of course, you can imagine, I'm a boy from Eagle Hawk, from Bendigo. I've done physical education, got involved somehow in social psychology and organisations, and I'm sitting around a table in Melbourne with people saying, well, we were all in orange robes, and about half or three quarters of them were master practitioners in NLP and had worked directly with Bandler and Grinder. So I was immersed in all this stuff. And as it works out, talking about discovering gifts, we'd have to sit around a table for 2 days and design the next round of workshops that we then go and run with telecom. Mm-hmm. And the only person who could actually take what was being said and then put it into a manual in such a way that we could actually use it was me.
Oh, right.
I was just, I didn't know that was something I could do, because once I said, I'm sick of doing this, why does someone else do it? And the wheels just fell off, because no one could take all of the information that was being created and remember take notes. And so my job was the manuals besides all the other stuff. So it's funny how you learn things about yourself in amongst all of that. But that's incredible. Talking about mentoring, I was going to talk to you about mentoring, but of course Greg was an incredible mentor to me. and all those guys and people in that team were. Give me a couple of examples of great mentors. You touched on one before, but give me an example of great mentors that you've had and the impact they had on you over whether it be the geophysics side of things or the management or the strategic side of things. Give me just, because we can learn success leaves clues.
Yeah, I think I haven't had any formal mentoring arrangements with anybody, but I think the informal mentoring, where I have had the most value is when you're working with somebody who can see that inner potential that everybody has, not just me, that the inner potential of somebody. Yes. And is ignited to bring that out, or for the person themselves to be able to realise their own potential.
Yes.
And so there's been, that car ride that I described earlier, that was an example of that, where, Claire knew that there was nothing wrong with this situation and that I was exactly the person for it. And she helped me see that. I've had bosses as well in the past who have done the same for me. It's just that little bit of leg up, confidence. You're here, you're in the right place at the right time. Now just do your thing, show up in all your glory. Just be you. So I think
which is that observer effect. As you say, the good mentor, you're reminding me of a quote from Andrew Carnegie, who was the richest man in the world at one stage. He said, when you're digging for gold, you don't look for the dirt. When you're digging for gold, you don't look for the dirt. So if I'm looking to bring the best out in someone, I'm not going to keep finding mistakes that they're making. I'm going to be trying to catch them doing things right, which, again, coming back to the observer effect, I want to be observing and shining a light, which, again, by the way, I love the word guru. I'd found out the word guru means to shine light where there's darkness.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I follow Sadhguru. Interesting enough, Greg had tried to get me at one stage. He said, Leigh, don't go swimming, come chanting with us. I went chanting a couple of mornings. Well, what the hell is this? There's no serotonin and dopamine coming from me. So that was the end of that. But those guys, the whole that Sadhguru, do you know the guy I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
So I've immersed myself in so much of his stuff over the last few years. And so he talked about guru, is the word mean shine light where there's darkness. But the other thing around the Buddhism thing, one of the guys talking of Sadhguru, that then led me on going to the Buddhist center out in Nolamara there, and again meditating on a Friday night. Not every, but again, one day the monk there, it said, again, send thoughts of loving kindness to yourself, which again, even on Monday night at our Blokes Talk beachside meeting, I do a visualization meditation at the end, summarising key points. And part of it, what some of the guys are talking about, the voice in their head, as someone said, is often the voice of your mum or your Auntie Norma or whoever, that critic. And I said in the meditation, I want you to talk more kindly to yourself, which I know was a revelation. Was a revelation to me around the whole idea of talking. But the monk had said, even when you've got a pain in the body, send thoughts of loving kindness to that part of the body where there's pain. When I was swimming, doing the 10K qualifier to do, because I did 2 swims to Rottnest, 2 solo swims, and so when the left shoulder getting sore, send thoughts of loving kindness to the left shoulder. Send thoughts of, and within a very short period of time, there's no soreness in the left shoulder. So that was super powerful. Let alone, as you say, thoughts of loving kindness to other people, thoughts of loving kindness to yourself as a human being, and even thoughts of loving kindness to parts of the body in terms of inner healing. Talk, as you say, the inner work.
Well, actually, on that, the the Vipassana meditation course that I did, that was 10 days of silent meditation, no talking, and I think it was 12 hours of meditation per day, very, very full on. But one of the experiences I had there is that it was all around observation of sensation in your body. That's all we did for 12 hours a day, and And what would happen is that you'd be, you start at the top of your head and you have this horrible pain in your knee, and it'd be like, oh yeah, I recognize the pain. You sort of try to be apply equanimity to it. Don't label it. Pain in the knee, and you're sort of going through your body. And then what happened was, when you look at the knee directly, this is the observer effect. You look at the knee directly, it dissolved, disappeared. And it happened, we had 10 days of this. So I got to see it repeat over and over and over again. It was very powerful. But one other thing I just wanted to touch on about that inner voice, I realized some time ago that I don't have an inner critic. That inner voice is gone.
Did you ever have it, you mean? Or you?
No, I had it. I think everyone has it. But
yes.
Through meditation, I became aware of it. And I liken it to, if you saw somebody speaking badly to your child, that inner voice that says, oh, you're hopeless, you're useless, why can't you do it better? You're never going to get it right. That type of, there is no way you would put up with somebody speaking that to anybody, or not even a child, even on the train, right?
Yes.
And so I just put a stop to it. But I mean, you have to be able to be aware of it to be able to do that. But it does not exist in my mind anymore. I still get feelings of anxiousness about things that are coming up, but never mean words come out of my inner voice. And I think that's been, like, I would love other people to experience that.
Well, the extreme of that, Jill, is literally last Friday. We went to the funeral of someone that we knew had been a parent at the primary school. I think I was telling you. Friday, was it? When, I can't remember. When was the last lifter meeting? But anyway, that was not the time I saw you. Was the week before, when I was about to scatter the ashes of one of my best mates.
Yes, that's right.
But then the following week, we were at a funeral of a person we knew, a parent at the school, and this particular person had been very overweight, had gastric banding, and died. And we thought, geez, it's interesting. Anyway, as the funeral was almost over, the eulogy from the son said, my dad took his own life.
Oh.
And when I talked to the daughter, she said, Dad was, I said, was there any signals? She said, Dad was always worrying, always catastrophizing. And I've got a strong inclination. He saw himself, I think his wife is a very capable woman. And I've got somewhere along the line, I think his own family, there was a lot of trauma. And I've got a strong inclination he saw himself as a not successful, as a loser. And I'm pretty certain, because what stage did his daughter, he literally was ringing his daughter every day of her pregnancy saying, are you okay, et cetera, et cetera. And then he's literally taken his own life in the days before she's about to have a baby. So what stage do you get to in terms of inner critic and voice and believing it, to say my unborn granddaughter is going to be better off not seeing me? So that's at the other extreme, which, as you say, making a conscious decision to speak kindly to yourself and not let that, as you say, if you heard anyone else say those words that clearly he was saying to himself, first you'd challenge them. What are you? That it's completely unacceptable. It's completely disempowering. It's actually crazy. But while it's in your, which is what I said to the guys, while it's in your head, and you accept that inner critic, as you say, it sounds sensible, particularly if you've got into the habit and neural pathways of regularly talking down to yourself. I mean, the problem is, again, I'm just thinking my own mother. Oh, Cheryl, you're silly, Cheryl. Oh, things you make one mistake, you're going to make two more, because it's like my siblings. What the hell? We grew up with that, this constant negative versus, no, I'm challenging that thought. It's disempowering, it's undermining me, it's doing no good, let alone what is it doing in terms of the observer effect, as in I only recreate and manifest more of that pain or that upset or that mistake. So
and that's what's steering our ship, right? That's that inner voice is steering the collective ship of humanity. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to create that separation, understand our humanness, understand our mental landscape, understand that we aren't our thoughts and that we have full control over our thoughts and that we can actually create the future using our creativity, the right side of our brain.
Yes.
Stepping away from these paradigms of thoughts and culture. It's like being on a train that just can't leave the railway track,
Yeah. And over the time, there's been vested interest in holding people into those paradigms. I mean, literally just yesterday, someone had put up about 20 good reasons why hemp was such an incredible crop in terms of building product, in terms of food, in terms of clothing, but because William Randolph Hearst was doing newspapers and had forests and producing paper. Get rid of it, because hemp, as I understand it, is way more efficient and can be used way more times than used. But because Hearst had control of the forest, let's find ways to demonize hemp. And because Rockefeller had the oil, the last thing we want is to be using hemp for energy and oil products. So we demonize it. And, use the marijuana example as a way, well, it's all sinful, but vested interests controlled the narrative versus what's actually best here. But we could talk for days on this, Jill. Jill, I'm conscious we've gone over an hour now, but what I want to do is ask you, is there any particular question or topic we haven't covered that you'd like us to cover before we wrap up?
I think we've actually covered everything.
Okay, great. All right.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much. I'm looking at my pad. I'm just going to go through some of the points on my pad here. Everything in no particular order. Obviously, the MBA and the strategic advisor. We repeat or we evolve. Some of my writing's so bad, but playing at the edge of possibility, and as you talked about, playfulness and learning versus hard work and learning. Because one of the books I'm reading at the moment is on deliberate practice, consciously how you go about practicing in terms of improving guitar or presentation skills, whatever. But you've made the point, which I'd say in my R factor, you want it to be fun and playful.
Yes, and actually there's a belief system probably from our parents and teachers that tells us that you can't succeed without hard work.
You got to do the hard work. You got to do the hard yards. You got to do the hard yards. Yeah, hard yards. Heart coherence. That's fantastic. And we've touched on staying present, not catastrophizing into the future or dwelling on the dead past. Trusting the self and self-talk. And central to that, as you say, is doing the inner work and reshaping the inner landscape. And people who trigger us are actually mirrors that you've said there. Our thoughts, and as you say, our thoughts certainly create our experiences so much. And of course, we talked about yoga, we talked about meditation, but literally on a daily basis, doing the good things to be the best human being you can be. Jill, thank you so much. If people want to get hold of you, of course, they can do that via your LinkedIn page there, which I'll go back to, Jill Jensen, and there's one of her articles, Challenging the Culture of Mono Thought. What a woman. What a woman. Jill, thank you so much for today, and I look forward to seeing you at Lifter, and we'll get this message out to as far and wide. So thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Leigh. It's such a pleasure. I really enjoyed that.
See you next time.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.